How's it going, everybody? Welcome into the Skyline Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jack Hartman, joined as always by my co-host, my good buddy out there on the West Coast, Nick Normand. Nick, how you doing today, man?
Doing well, doing well. Really, that had a good ring to it. What about co-host on the West Coast? I don't know.
There we go.
West Coast co-host? Yeah. Yes. Good to see you though today, Jack. Super fired up. Lots of fun stuff going on. College football's been popping, NFL getting going. NBA just started about 2-3 weeks ago. So I feel like we're right in the prime of so much fun sports stuff going on in this part of the calendar. Super fired up. My Steelers just got a win. And so super fired up. And we have a little co-host today joining us as well. Another co-host.
We have a special guest today.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we have a special guest today because someone doesn't want to take a nap quite yet. So,
yes.
We're here. We're rolling. We're
doing
make
it work.
So,
yes. I'm doing well though, Jack. How are you doing?
I'm doing well also. This little one turns 3 months old this weekend, so we're really in the swing of things, feeling more and more comfortable and just prepared with or ready for whatever. So we're but no, life is good. Sports are good. Football is happening. Like you said, the NBA is here. We're not gonna talk NBA quite yet. There's still it's early and there's still a lot of overreacting that needs to happen. And also we're right in the heart of the football season right now with the NFL and nearing the end where things are starting to take a little more focus with college football. So don't be afraid. It's not like we don't care about the NBA. We will talk about the NBA here soon. But we're just waiting a little bit because there's still some important football stuff to talk about, including some crazy Week 11 matchups here in the NFL. We've got a big one tonight as we're recording this. We're recording Thursday afternoon/morning. And big game tonight in Commanders-Eagles. The Commanders lost last week to the Steelers, and in doing so are now, I think they're a half game back of the Eagles right now, first place in the NFC East. So big game with big implications tonight between the Commanders and the Eagles. I feel like it's actually interesting. You look at the Commanders and their schedule and their season so far compared to the Steelers. And actually there's a lot of parallels when it comes to playing the easier part of your schedule early on, which has been great for Jaden Daniels to get him comfortable and confident. But now it's all right, we're moving into the harder part of the year for the Commanders, just like the Steelers are moving into that. So Nick, what are your expectations for Jaden Daniels and the Commanders tonight against the Eagles?
Jaden Daniels and the Commanders are a super, super fun team. Playing against my Steelers, they were a bunch of fun to watch in terms of they are doing a lot of great scheme stuff. They're running a lot of screens. They're throwing the ball deep. Terry McLaurin's doing a great job with that. Ideally, with Brian Robinson coming back this week, potentially he did not play against the Steelers, and Austin Eckler and it's not Rodriguez. They have Chris Rodriguez, I think, is another running back they have. Their running game was inconsistent against the Steelers, but the Steelers were very game plan specific against Jaden Daniels. Before the Steelers game, he was averaging over 50 yards per game, and against the Steelers, I believe he had 6 yards. And so they completely took out the QB running element of the whole offense.
Yeah.
Every time there was an option play where it would play action play more than anything, when he could have handed it off to the running back, or no, zone reads what I'm trying to get at, where he could have zone read it, quarterback goes that way, running back goes that way. TJ Watt was running straight at Jaden Daniels every time, was not going to let him ever break off any kind of run, wouldn't let him get going. And so Jaden Daniels was neutralized as far as his running element to this game. He still threw the ball very effectively. There were a lot of drops, but Jaden Daniels is a very scheme-specific player in terms of how you got to scheme against him. The Steelers' defense is one of the top 3 to 5 defenses in the league, I would say. And so the Steelers kind of had the dudes and the scheme to be able to do it. I'm curious if the Eagles try and use that blueprint to stop Jaden from running, and if they can shut down the Terry McLaurin deep ball or the screen game as well. And on the Eagles side of things, man, Saquon Barkley balling out. We're a couple of weeks removed now from, or a week or two removed now from his reverse hurdle that broke the internet. Saquon's an incredible player, man. But Saquon, is he just going to be able to run over this Commanders team that have good D tackles, even though one of them's out currently for the rest of the year? Johnny Newton, the player who jumped off sides against the Steelers to seal the game for the Steelers, he has played very well this year as a rookie defensive tackle out of Illinois. They also have Payne, who's playing very well at defensive tackle. If those guys can kind of hold together the run defense, I think that could limit the Eagles. I think A.J. Brown could go off this game, though, especially if Lattimore doesn't play. He's had a hamstring injury since being traded from the Saints and had one at the end of his time on the Saints. And I just feel like if Lattimore is not healthy, A.J. Brown could go for 120, 150 yards, just a huge game. I think the downfield pass, I think this Commanders defense could get shredded if Lattimore is not there. If he is there, I still think they could get toasted. But without him, the Steelers, who aren't a great offense, still had a very good day. So I think the Eagles might be a knife through butter, anything through tissue paper, man. It could get ugly as far as that side of the ball. But I think they could flip it on its head as far as the Commanders making the Eagles defense work. But the Eagles defense I'd consider far better than the Commanders. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I think right now all signs are pointing to Lattimore not playing. He didn't practice yesterday at all, so not a great sign for the idea of him playing. But we won't rule it out. But yeah, I think what will be really, really interesting is basically, can Washington stop Saquon? Because if Washington can stop Saquon, then nothing. Then the Eagles' defense, really nothing. Basically, everything works because of the threat of Saquon. If Washington can stop Saquon from, from getting those, 6 to 7 yards chunk plays when running the ball through the middle, if they can stop that, then they're able to divert more attention to the receivers. And if they're able to do that, then you're not going to have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in Jahan Dotson revenge game. You're not going to have them in these one-on-one situations. So it'll be, I think where the game will be won or lost is what can Washington's defense do to slow down and stop Saquon Barkley? Because let's be real, they won't stop him; they'll slow him down. And so if they can do that enough to make it harder to throw the ball down the field, then I think that'll be really good for this team. But I don't know if they'll be able to do that. That's a tough ask. That no one, I guess Tampa Bay was able to do that earlier on this year, but other than them, we haven't seen anybody be able to do that effectively enough.
The Eagles' offense too, I think they're just kind of hitting their stride. Their schemes aren't particularly good, I would say, but the players, you got to have two corners to cover A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. You need somebody, a good linebacker or safety, to be able to cover Goddard. You need an entire defensive front to be able to figure out Saquon Barkley. He's a great pass catcher, great runner of the football. So this offense is just complete, especially if Jalen Hurts isn't going to turn over the ball. And Jaden Daniels has been absolutely sound not turning over the ball. The Steelers, they did a really good job against the Commanders on defense, but they could not get Jaden to make a bad decision. They could not get him to throw into a tight window, to force a fumble on him, to throw in it. He is just so sound with the football to where they're such an efficient offense not turning over the football. So if the Eagles can kind of force him into those kind of issues, or if the Commanders can force Jalen into those kind of issues, that could easily tip the game potentially in the Commanders' favor.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Jalen Hurts, has done a great job not turning the ball over while the Eagles have sort of been on this little streak. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that he doesn't have that in him. I think,
Right.
and not just that he doesn't have that in him. I think that him not turning the ball over in these last few games has been more of an outlier than anything, just because I feel like throughout his career, we've seen more of him turning the ball over and turning it over poorly than him protecting the ball and taking care of it. So I could be wrong there, but we haven't seen that from Jaden Daniels. He's made very good decisions, very smart decisions. He's done a great job not getting hit like a Looney Tunes character, like he was in college. Just
Right.
the Jaden Daniels development has been impressive and fun to watch. And so I'll be excited to see what he does here tonight against. Really, I would say that the Steelers were a big step up in competition, and I would say that the Eagles right now are just as high in competition, but do it 2 times in a row. I'm pretty sure the game is in Philadelphia tonight, if I have that correct. So also going on the road this time, not doing it from home. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Mhm. Definitely agree with you there, Jack. This should be a super fun game between two more offensively oriented teams. And we'll be able to see, is it more the efficient offense or more the explosive star-studded offense, and really be able to compare notes.
Yeah. Moving on though, in the 1 p.m. Eastern window on Sunday, a game that has typically been a battle of the defenses, but I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens are playing on Sunday at 1 o'clock. This is going to be very different than our typical Steelers Ravens matchups that are basically like, okay, the first team to score 16 points is going to win. Very defensive oriented, low scoring type of game that we're used to. I don't think we're going to see that this time around. One, because I think that oh my goodness, someone's upset. Another game that we're super excited about. There's a vesting interest in it for you for sure. Definitely the best game that we're going to see in the 1 p.m. Eastern time slot this week is the Steelers and Ravens are playing. This is the Steelers' first divisional game of the year because of the way their schedule was backloaded with all the divisional games towards the end. This is a game that traditionally has been like a hey, who's the first team to score 16 points? They're going to win. Just all about the defense. Offense isn't really doing anything. That being said, I think we might see a shootout this year because the Ravens' defense is terrible. The Ravens' offense is insane. The Steelers' offense is pretty good. The Steelers' defense is also pretty good, but I mean, it's the Ravens' offense. The only caveat to that is that Lamar Jackson can't, for the life of him, play against the Pittsburgh Steelers and look like an MVP candidate. So, Nick, what are you most excited about? What are the key matchups within the game within the game that you're looking for? What are you preparing for on Sunday?
I'm super fired up for this game. This game should be a whole bunch of fun. Steelers Ravens, huge rivalry. Last Thursday, we got an amazing divisional game with Bengals Ravens on Thursday Night Football, and that game was incredibly close. Jamar Chase going crazy. I have him on my fantasy team. He went nuts last week.
It was a good time.
Oh my goodness, so good. And they won and the Ravens won that game by a point. And then the Steelers play the Commanders on Sunday, and they win that game by a point. And they barely sneak these games out over their opponents. There might have been some questionable calls in both of these games, hard-fought games, high-scoring games. And man, both these teams are coming off of emotional highs. They're both very well-coached teams. John Harbaugh, a very good coach. Mike Tomlin, a very good coach. But just some stats to rattle off to you. The Ravens right now, their run defense and run offense are both number one in the NFL. So they are a tremendous team with the Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry running offense, and they are the best run defense in the whole league. although their pass defense has been terrible and letting up nosebleed after nosebleed. Joe Burrow hucking the ball all over the field, seeing Jamar Chase break tackles, 70-yard touchdowns, 2 in the game last Thursday. This is just going to be a style, as Mike Tomlin says, the style makes the fight. The style of this game is going to be very interesting, with both these teams having great run offenses and great run defenses. We might see both of them avoiding the run, and this game just become a pass shootout. The Ravens right now have the number 1 run offense and the number 3 pass offense, and so their offense is great all around. The Steelers' run offense is still very good at number 8, and currently their pass offense is overall ranked number 26, but that's deceiving in that since Russ has entered, he's been averaging 245 pass yards, which if you took 245 yards and normalized that for the whole season, that will put him at number 6 in the league instead of 26 as far as pass yards per game. And so you could see what's essentially a tremendous run offense and tremendous run defense against an incredible pass and an incredible pass offense and an incredible pass offense versus neither of these teams having great pass defenses. But will the Ravens be able to put together a decent pass defense game is the real question here. Because having the number 32 ranked pass defense for the Ravens, the Steelers are a very respectable number 18. But the number 32 pass defense with Kyle Hamilton seemingly going to be out this week after injuring his ankle last week. It's really going to be a question of, is George Pickens just going to break this game open and do what Jamar Chase did last week? Is Calvin Austin going to be able to run fast and catch deep bombs? Is Mike Williams going to be able to replicate that deep bomb touchdown to win the game last week? Because Russell Wilson, we do know, brought the deep ball here back to Pittsburgh. And Lamar Jackson is a tremendous player and far better than Russ at this point. And Derrick Henry's much better, I would say, than any running back the Steelers have, maybe by a smaller margin than the Russ to Jackson comparison. But the Steelers' pass defense, Minka could get in there, do some good stuff. TJ Watt getting in there, Nick Herbig coming back from injury. And so the Steelers, are they going to be able to scheme up ways to stop this Ravens offense? And I don't know if this Ravens team has ways to scheme up. Are they going to be able to stop this deep passing game from the Steelers while simultaneously not letting them run? And on top of that, too, one final thing is that the Steelers just last week playing the Commanders showed what their strategy is with 5 down linemen and not letting the quarterback run game take effect. Are the Ravens going to be able to find notes to be able to take advantage if the Steelers try and use that same scheme against Lamar this week? So lots and lots of notes, tremendous matchup. This game, I think, could be very similar to last week's Steelers game, 28-27, pretty high scoring, very close game. I think it's going to be a great game.
I completely agree. I think personally, people are overhyping the Ravens this year. They haven't impressed me yet. It's hard to feel like this is an impressive football team when they lost to the Browns in that game. And it was like, oh, well, Jameis, in the very next game, he threw 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. You lost to the Browns there. You nearly let the Cowboys come back in the fourth quarter, and you were up 28-3. There's just, you lost to the Raiders. I just don't know. I just don't trust this Ravens team. I typically don't trust the Ravens come playoff time, but this year, in the regular season, I'm not trusting them. I don't view their win over the Broncos as oh no, the Ravens are such an elite squad, because again, they're playing against the Broncos. Bo Nix is a rookie. I think everyone talking about how great the Broncos defense is. Granted, I do think they have a good defense, but I don't think it was as hyped up as everybody was acting when you look at the teams they've played against. Again, you just let Joe Burrow walk all over you last week. I mean, if he just had even the slightest bit of a competent defense, you're not winning that game against him. So I really don't trust the Ravens. I honestly think that the Ravens are being overhyped and the Steelers are being underhyped. I think the Steelers are genuinely are going to win this game. I think even if Lamar Jackson has a great game, I think the Steelers have enough to win it. But also, it's the Steelers, and it means that Lamar Jackson is going to fumble the ball 3 times and throw 2 picks probably, just
I'm
because that's
so
what he does.
I'm so curious too, because one of the big reasons the Steelers have been able to do well against the Ravens with Lamar is like, hey, you stop the Lamar run game, and the running backs do pretty well. Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, running backs of the past Lamar tenure. And I'm curious, like, okay, they stop Lamar from running. Is Derrick Henry just going to like bust some like pretty big runs? This is a good Steelers run defense, but I'm curious, are they going to be able to overcommit to Lamar like they did Jaden Daniels? And Derrick Henry is much better than Austin Eckler right now at this point in his career. So I could see Derrick Henry causing problems if they use the same scheme, the Steelers against the Ravens this week as they did the Commanders. It could go terribly with like Derrick Henry busting a 50-yard run or something like that. I could see something go very wrong like that.
Yeah, my only thought though is like Derrick Henry. I mean, one, Derrick Henry hasn't been a great pass catching back just in general. But two, like the Ravens haven't used him for that, like basically all this year. And so the Steelers are going to game plan to not let Lamar run, including when he drops back to pass and they have everything covered up. And so like, is Lamar going to have a safety valve like he did have with J.K. Dobbins? It's like, here, I can dump this off to you, and he's gonna make things work. So there's that. Again, I think that this is going to be like the worst pass defense that the Steelers are going to face all year this next week. And so it wouldn't surprise me if Russ and George, like if George Pickens has a game like Jamar Chase had, and if Russ has a game like Joe Burrow had, like just because they just can't stop the ball once it's in the air, especially with Kyle Hamilton potentially being out, who right now is their best defensive back. Like I'm very concerned about what the Ravens are going to do against the Steelers pass game this week. So that's game.
There's also a
thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's also a really dope note of like in the past, Steelers Ravens obviously very bloodthirsty. This is the first like true revenge game type of thing going on with this many former Steelers and Ravens on the opposite side. Deontay Johnson traded to the Ravens in the last couple weeks from the Panthers. He's coming to play Pittsburgh, and that game should be the game should be very good. So could Deontay break out? Arthur Mollett for the Ravens. Patrick Queen for the Steelers coming back against the Ravens. We'll see if he's able to utilize his speed to take down Lamar.
Yeah.
And Deshaun Elliott, who playing strong safety for the Steelers this year, has played better than Minkah Fitzpatrick and has been playing at a Pro Bowl to All-Pro level at safety. He does not get the recognition Minkah does, but like, man, clutch tackles, deflecting passes, run stopping. At safety, he's played incredibly well. And so to have these former Ravens on defense against some of these former Steelers for the Ravens, there's just going to be an extra note, I think, of hatred and vitriol potentially between these two teams. With new additions, especially, Derrick Henry's now in this mix. Russell Wilson's in this mix. You got new blood and revenge kind of reeking from this game in a really great way, I think. I think it'll be great television.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be an unreal game. It's just is it gonna be? I think it's gonna be an unreal game. I just think it's gonna be an unreal game like the Ravens Bengals game was, not like this game has typically been. So we'll see. That'll be a good one. Following it up, they've met 3 times in the last 3 years, I think, in the playoffs. The Bills are hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. This game is going to be really, really interesting. I think a lot of people are making a big point of emphasis about the wide receivers that Josh Allen doesn't have in this game on Sunday, but all year Josh Allen hasn't had all of his receivers healthy, and he's still been electric, and the Bills are still winning games. I'm really, really excited to see. I think this will be our truest test of what this Bills team can be. I feel like when they played the Ravens earlier in the year, that was just a really, really weird game, and it's like hard to draw a lot from that. So I'm really, really excited to see what this game is like, see what the Bills can do against actually one of the best defenses in the NFL. That's mostly why I say that things were so weird when they played the Ravens, is because of how bad the Ravens defense has been this year. And they looked like that. Just things just seemed weird and awry. So I'm excited to see how the Bills are going to match up against the Chiefs. I'm excited to see how the Chiefs are going to match up against the Bills. The Bills have kind of an undersold defense this year. It doesn't have a lot of the flashier names that they've had in years past. They really, like, basically all of their DBs that we've known since the Josh Allen era are gone now. But they're still making it work, and they're still looking really, really good. Even they're still without Matt Milano, right?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
even without Milano. So I think it'll be interesting. What I would say a struggling Chiefs offense this year. Mahomes has thrown like 9 picks already. They only scored 16 points last week against the Broncos. And again, we talked about the Broncos defense, but it's not, that great. This Chiefs team is different than any Super Bowl winning Chiefs team we've seen so far because of how reliant they are on their defense. And so I think it'll be really, really interesting. I think that for the Chiefs, this is going to be the best quarterback that they have faced so far this year, outside of Lamar Jackson week 1. But again, week 1 it's hard to say anything about anybody. So I think this is going to be the best quarterback that they're going to have faced since Lamar in week 1. We'll see if Josh Allen is able to break through that defense, or if that defense is going to show, is going to prevail. I think if the Chiefs win this game, it's really, really hard to look at the rest of their schedule and see a loss before weeks like 16 and 17 once they've locked up the 1 seed, and they're not playing anybody. I think if the Chiefs really win this game, like blowout, then it's hard to imagine anybody stopping them from winning the Super Bowl this year and three-peating. But Nick, what are your thoughts going into this game? What are you seeing? What are you waiting for?
So this Chiefs team, as you said, as the Chiefs dynasty has gone on, you've seen the offense go from the 50 touchdown Mahomes first year starting, and the offense being all the way up here, and the defense being terrible all the way up to much better with Spagnuolo, to now it's man, the offense is way down here, and the defense has been very much carrying this team. Obviously, special teams has came into a big play, especially last week. They've had great return game from Kadarius Toney as well as Mecole Hardman in the past. They've had very good special teams this year as well. And this Chiefs team, although it's not offensive-led as it has been in the past with two-time MVP, 3-time Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes, the offense still isn't terrible, but it's a far cry from where it's been in the past. Sure. And so I'm really curious. I think with this defensive-led Chiefs team, are they going to be able to hold Josh Allen to a poor game? Because Josh Allen, I think he's very much a roller coaster typically of his great games are incredible. His bad games are throwing really weird interceptions and fumbles, I feel like. And it seems like if you get good Josh Allen, this game's going to be super, super tight, but the Bills could come out on top or win even by a score or 2. But if it goes the opposite way, then the Chiefs, I think, have a really, really good shot to pull off this road win. What I'm curious about that I'm just looking up right now is what the spread is for this game. I'm just curious what the line is.
I think I saw 3.5 in favor of the Chiefs. I think I saw that
in favor
early.
of the Chiefs in Buffalo?
I think I saw 3.5 in favor of the Chiefs, according to ESPN Bet earlier this morning.
Okay, let us see. I have it now. I was just going to take a peek. I am seeing Chiefs getting 2 points, so Bills only a 2-point favorite. Man, this The Chiefs, I just don't see the Chiefs getting blown out this game or blowing out the Bills. The Chiefs have blown out nobody this whole year. Their offense doesn't really allow them to blow other teams out.
Right.
And the Bills haven't really been a team that blows other teams out as much either this year, typically, since their offense has become more stable with Josh Allen throwing the ball a lot less, running the ball a lot less, and being more conservative. And so this seems like it will be a really good game, in my opinion, to tease. Like, if I could tease the Chiefs from +2 up to like +8, I think that would be a really good spot to get it at, because I could see the Chiefs winning this game, but losing this game by more than 8 points, I think would be really tough.
Right.
I feel like this could be one of those games, though, that the Bills win by like 3 or 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that it should be another page. This will definitely be another good page in this rivalry that has come up on the Chiefs side in the playoffs. But the Bills have played very well in the regular season against them too. Played tight in the playoffs, obviously, but have not got a win in the playoffs against Mahomes yet. So we'll see. We'll see if they can figure out this game, which direction it's going to go, and what the playoff implications are like. Because if the Bills win this game, then they could potentially work their way up to the 1 seed if the Chiefs start losing a couple of these games. But if they lose this game, it's going to be difficult to get Kansas City out of that 1 seed, or to get even close if you're Buffalo.
Yeah, I feel like if Kansas City wins, it's basically locked up that they've got the 1 seed. Because I mean, here let's look at the standings. At that point, they would have a two win and 3-loss lead over the Bills, who are next. They would have a 3-win, or depending on what happens in the Steelers game, 3 wins or 2 wins. It would be really, really hard, especially with their remaining schedule. I feel like every week they win and everyone's like, are they going to go undefeated this year? Are they going to go undefeated this year? And so it'll be really, really tough to see after that. My concern with the Bills is that they have against teams that currently right now have at least 6 wins. The Bills are 1-2. So they've won a good number of games, but they beat the Cardinals. That's their 1 win against a team with 6 wins. And then outside of that, they got blown out by the Ravens. They lost by a field goal to the Texans. Everybody else that they have played has 5 or fewer wins. And so basically everybody else that they've played is right around 500. I'd be interested to see sort of then, what the Bills' strength of record is. But I said at the beginning of this year, when I was sort of going through the Bills' schedule and plotting out their games, and by the way, I'm still 100% perfect on the pick'ems for the Bills games that I made before the season started. But I looked at their schedule and I was like, they have a really easy schedule except for 5 really tough games. And those 5 tough games were Baltimore, Houston, Kansas City, San Francisco, and Detroit. And I had them losing all 5 of those games because, again, I think the Bills are in a rebuild right now. And lucky for them, they're in the worst division in the NFL. And they're playing against one of the worst maybe the worst NFC division this year in the NFC West. So they've got a lot of wins there on their schedule. I know the NFC South is the NFC South, but Tampa Bay and Atlanta, I feel, are friskier and could do more damage than Arizona and Seattle. So, but regardless, I think that there's a chance that they come out of this year with a really, really good record. But then you also, when you actually look at the teams that they've played, the good teams that they've played, they haven't beaten. I think Kansas City is going to win this game. I think that'll put Buffalo at 8-3. Again, there are 2 teams tied for second in their division at 3-6 right now. So Buffalo is winning this division. They're getting a first round home game in the playoffs this year. There's no way that's not happening. But it's once, when they're in that game, and let's say they're playing a really, really gutsy Bengals team that finds their way into the playoffs. Let's say they're playing a they're playing the Ravens again, in that wild card round, depending on what else happens. Like you start looking at what those matchups might be, and you start to wonder, like, okay, this isn't playing the Dolphins and the Jets and the Patriots anymore. This isn't playing Jacksonville and Indianapolis anymore. You're playing against teams that have winning records and are in the playoffs. What are you going to do? And so I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I'm definitely on the let's hold our horses on the Bills hype train right now, just because, again, of their wins compared to their losses, and it's really, really easy. We're seeing it in college football right now. Really easy for teams that don't play anybody to look really, really good. And so it'll just be interesting to see how this pans out, how Buffalo's season pans out.
Mm-hmm. Buffalo too. I just snuck a look at their schedule right now. And their schedule is really, really cut and dry, I would say, for the rest of the way, as far as a chunk of difficult games and then a chunk of easy games.
Yeah.
Next 4 games, next month: Chiefs, 49ers, at Rams, at Lions. Your easy game being the Rams. The Rams are still a tough out. Like, that game won't be easy for you.
No.
They're not by any stretch the Super Bowl winning Rams of a couple of years ago. But
Right.
if they have Nakua and Cup healthy, and if they can get the offensive line on the same page, they got a good offense and they can put together good defense, especially with the front playing as well as they are. Versus, we were talking about last week, Versus has been playing very, very well, should be defensive rookie of the year. Fisk on the defensive line as well, playing well. And if your easy game for the next month is the Rams, it's like, okay, I think this Chiefs game circled on their schedule like, hey, we care about Kansas City. And the next game against the 49ers could be tough. And then Rams come into town, going to Detroit December 15th. I think that game could be a ton of fun there. But ending the year, Patriots, Jets, at Patriots, like, they're going to go through this rough stretch, and then they got to reel off these last 3 wins easily. And so we could see them getting that easy stretch, getting healthy end of the year, and just sliding right into the playoffs with a really, really clean kind of pathway at the end of the year right then. Because we know, as you said, they're making this playoffs. They're winning this division. It's not particularly close, but we're really going to be able to test their grit as far as this next month of football, as far as Buffalo goes.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing that, like, let's say, and this is how I had it going into this year, let's say Buffalo loses 3 of their next 4 games, right? They lose Kansas City, lose to San Francisco, beat the Rams, lose to the Lions. Even with those 3 losses, that could basically, depending on what happens elsewhere, solidify we are the 3 seed. Like, because of how bad the rest of their division is, they could lose 3 of those 4 games and still clinch the division. And also, we could see them be at that point that it's like, listen, we're not catching the Steelers or the Ravens, and we're not falling below the Texans. And so they could go into those last 3, New England, New York, New England, and basically, like, be able to sit their guys for, like, all 3 of those games. I don't think if I were Sean McDermott, I wouldn't. I'd be like, listen, even though we're locked in where we are, I want all of you guys playing at least the first half of that first game against New England, just to, give you some confidence. Because who knows, you might go 1-3 in those 4 games and not play very well, and you don't want that to be okay. The last taste in our mouth was going to Detroit, and Detroit being Detroit and beating the brakes off of us, and then, all right, well, we're going to sit for the next 3 weeks until we play in the wild card round, but they might be in a position where after those 4 games, they're like, we are locked in where we are. They might not. They might beat the Chiefs this week, and then it's like, okay, we still have a dog in this fight, and it might be completely different. But these next 4 games, if they lose 3 of the 4, which I think they could do, I'm not sure that they will do, but I think they could do. It'll be interesting to see then, hopefully that doesn't start them down a slippery slope that they can't get back up going into the playoffs.
If they had beat Bills Texans back in early October, losing to the Texans by just 3 points, if they would have beat those Texans, that could have put them primed to at least be the 3 seed in this case. But because the tiebreaker would go to the Texans, like they could slip to the 4 seed if they started resting dudes in the last couple weeks.
Sure.
But man, if they had beat that Texans team, they would be in a much better position to be able to be like, okay, the next 4 weeks we might go 1-3, but like we're locked into at least this 3 seed. And now if they could have moved up to potentially the 2 seed, or if they still have a shot to do that, to be able to play the 7, because the 7 seed in the AFC could either be very dangerous in like a Bengals team, or could be not very dangerous in like a Broncos team. So it really feels like a coin flip to me on what you're going to get as far as that 7 seed. But right now, AFC, Steelers, Ravens, one of those teams is going to win the division. The other one's going to be probably like the 5. And then you got the Chargers being the 6. And then like Bengals, Broncos, Colts, something like that. Jets, I don't think they have a shot to get back in this get up off the mat. But man, those 3 teams, like there's a 2 out of 3 shot that you have a pretty easy wild card game. If you get the Bengals, like if the Ravens are the 2 seed and they get Ravens first round, if we get a third Ravens-Bengals matchup in the first round of the playoffs, that would be a lot of fun.
That'd be awesome.
But man, like it really depends on how the seeding goes late in the season. But the Bills, as we were saying, like they feel like they're probably in that 3 area of the playoffs. And it really doesn't even matter really rest of their schedule. Like they could win out and it's like, okay, they're in a good position for the number 1 seed. But like Chiefs already have a good lead on them there. It's really difficult, I think, for them to move up a ton, and it's damn near impossible for them to move back a ton. So they seem locked in here.
Yeah. So last thing that I kind of want to talk about here is let's talk about this Chargers-Bengals game that is happening on Sunday night. So the Bengals are a team that it's just like, oh, they're not quite dead yet. Oh, they're not quite dead yet. Oh, they're not quite dead yet. But at the same time, you look at them and you're like, but like they're like barely breathing also. You know, they are really, really close. And you know, if I'm being honest, I think if they lose this week, it's over for them. I just find it really, really hard looking at the AFC playoff standings right now. They're currently in 9th. The Colts are ahead of them with a tiebreaker by having a better conference win percentage. Then you've got the Broncos ahead of them at the 7, the Chargers that are at the 6, the Ravens that are at the 5. There's just no way that the Bengals are coming back and winning the AFC North. That's just not happening. Not even going to entertain the thought of that. I don't care if it's mathematically possible. It's not happening. However, they do still have a chance to make the wild card, and winning this week would be a really, really big boost for them. I think that'll probably jump them up to the 8, because the Colts are playing the Jets this week, and though the Jets are really bad, Anthony Richardson I think is worse, and he's been announced that he's going to be starting from here on out, which we could talk about the Colts' dysfunction at the quarterback position another day. But I look at the Bengals. I look at where they are right now. I look at their remaining schedule, and I think if they lose this game, one, they need it just for momentum, just to like keep the hope alive a little bit, because it'll be really hard to be 4-7 and compete in the AFC this year for a wild card spot. Because I think then at that point you literally have to win out. Just looking at the AFC wildcard picture, I'm not sure that a 9-8 team is getting in as that last wild card. I think it's going to be 10-7. So if you lose this game, you basically have to win out, and you play the Steelers, you go to the Cowboys, you go to the Titans, you host the Browns, you host the Broncos, and you go to the Steelers. Now, compared to what we were talking about just a minute ago with the Bills schedule, seems pretty manageable having Browns, Titans, Cowboys in there, and even Broncos at home. You know, I'd maybe lump into that. But you need perfection. You basically need perfection if you lose this week. If you win this week, then you can afford to drop one of those games to the Steelers. But I'm even if they win it, I'm not even sure that they're going to pull it off. But if they lose, then I'm fully writing them off, eliminating them from playoff contention. Nick, what are your thoughts about the Bengals right now?
The Bengals, their schedule just looks so fickle in terms of like the one really the elephant in the room is that week 1 Patriots loss at home. Because losing to a Patriots team that we knew wasn't going to be good, that we knew was going to be starting Jacoby Brissett, they lost that game. But the biggest thing, though, they've been losing close to a lot of good teams, losing close to the Chiefs by 1 point, losing close to the Ravens twice this year. But man, their wins are not good.
No.
Like, let me rattle off the 4 wins to you. Beating the Andy Dalton Panthers by 10 points, still letting up 24 points to the Andy Dalton Panthers. Letting up a 10-point win against the Giants. A 7-point win.
A 10-point win against the Giants that they only scored 17 points.
True. Beating the Browns, the Deshaun Watson Browns, mind you. So not even the Jameis Winston Browns, the Deshaun Watson Browns. And then beating the Raiders, scoring 41 on them, also allowing 24. But their losses, their defense is just letting up nosebleed after nosebleed outside of that Patriots Week 1 game. Letting up 26 to the Chiefs, 38 to the Commanders, 41 to the Ravens, 37 to the Eagles, and 35 again to the Ravens. They're probably averaging in their losses like 30 points.
Yeah.
Their defense is letting up on average probably 30 points in these losses. Like they're letting up nosebleed after nosebleed to good teams, mind you, but their defense is getting smoked by good teams.
Right.
So I'm just very worried. Like rest of their schedule, they'll be able to beat the Dallas Cowboys without Dak. They should be able to beat the Titans with the amalgamation of Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. Like that should be there. At home against the Browns, that should be a win, but by no means is it guaranteed for them, I would say. But then you got Steelers twice, you got the Broncos, you got this Chargers team.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not easy for them. They have a relatively easy schedule, but like to any competent team, they're struggling. And to good teams, they're getting smoked. Yep. So it's a struggle for them. I think their defense has been awful when called upon.
Yeah, it's been brutal. I mean, I'm looking at this Raiders game, right? And they win 41-24. Offense looks great. Burrow throws 5 touchdowns. They give up 24 points to the Raiders. Now, if you look at the Raiders schedule, the Raiders are currently 2-7. The only time that they scored higher than that 24 points was when they beat the Ravens in week 2 and they scored 26. Other than that, they have not scored more than 20 points in a game except for that game against the Bengals. Like, what does that say about this Bengals defense that the Raiders were able to score 24 points in that game? I mean, you look at some of these the Panthers. The Panthers scored 24 points against them. I really feel for Joe Burrow because he is having such a freaking good year. Like, he deserves to be in the MVP, to be an MVP candidate, and he's not because they keep losing. He's completing 68% of his passes. He has thrown for 2,672 yards, 24 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. Like, that is such a good stat line for him. Like that's like borderline best out of your career type stats right there. And they're 4-6 because the defense is so bad. I think they're an interesting one when we get to the offseason that we're going to have to talk about. Like, what do you do from here if you're the Bengals? Like, the team that was around when you made the Super Bowl is not around anymore, basically. Like, where do you go from here? So that I think that'll be an interesting conversation to have later. But yeah, I think for the Bengals, like, if you win this week, then you're still alive and we'll still talk about you. But if you lose this week, then it's over and it's time to start thinking about your future. Thinking about, listen, should we not play Joe Burrow for the rest of the year? Not to keep him healthy and, to get down to a draft pick that we can use. Because the fact is, if you go 9-8 or 8-9, and you're the 8th best team in the AFC, then you're not going to have a draft pick that's really going to help you a lot, especially with the potential defensive guys that are going to be around early because of how quarterback heavy this draft is about to be. So if I'm Cincinnati and you lose, if you win this game, then never mind. You just keep going balls to the wall, trying to win the rest of your games and get into the playoffs. And it would be an incredible story because I think they'd be the first team to start 0-3 to ever make the playoffs. So that would be unreal. But again, highly unlikely at this point. I mean, they just put themselves in such a hole early. Like, go ahead.
I'm pretty concerned about this Bengals offense too. Like that's kind of an underrated story because Joe Burrow is playing tremendously. Jamar Chase is playing tremendously. Like outside of those two dudes, like T. Higgins has been pretty dang injured this year and has been out most of the year. And let me read off to. And he's franchise tagged. He's going to be gone this season, basically. All the reports are saying T. Higgins is essentially gone. They've scored 30 points 5 times this season, and all 5 of them putrid defenses as far as against the pass. Ravens twice, they scored over 30. Lost both of those games, but scored over 30 against terrible pass defense. Scored 41 against the Raiders, a bad defense. Scored 34 against the Panthers, bad defense. Scored 33 against the Commanders, bad defense. Like their offense is only exploding and like outputting these big numbers that we imagine like this Bengals team to have against terrible defenses, especially against the pass. It's literally Joe Burrow, huck that ball to Jamar Chase and keep throwing it to him, keep feeding him, hope he breaks a 70-yarder. Zach Moss has been injured. He's out for the rest of the year. They traded for Khalil Herbert. He hasn't really done anything yet. Chase Brown has played well, but in a very limited snap count, depending on the week. But, man, this offense isn't even as good as I feel like we think it is. And this defense is putrid. So I think that the Bengals are probably exactly what they think they are. Not great on either side of the ball and very Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow-centric on their superstars.
Yeah, which means that come next offseason, Jamar Chase, especially with the year that he's having, he's going to want to be the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. And if you're the Bengals, I think you have to do it. I just think you do. I think that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase together are good enough that you'll be able to find, like they have with like Ioshivas and some of these other guys, that they're like, you're like, who? That they're slotting in, and because Jamar Chase is garnering so much attention, they're doing well. And so I think that if you're Cincinnati, you're like, listen, let's pay him. Let's keep using draft picks on like some later rounds, your 4th and 5th round picks, take some flyers on some receivers, sort of scour the practice squads for some receivers that are going to be cheap, so that you can still have dudes that will, because they're worthy of being on an NFL roster. They'll be decent because they'll be able to catch the ball. And they won't have to compete against much because Jamar Chase is on the other side of the field. But yeah, I think we view this Bengals team as like, listen, you had that weird, really early window with Joe Burrow that we weren't expecting you to have necessarily, and you didn't get it done, and that's fine. Like, you have good coaching staff, you still have a great quarterback and a great wide receiver and some other great pieces, but it's time to rebuild. And I think because of how good the Bills are doing this year while being in a rebuilding year, a lot of teams are going to be thinking, well, we can still rebuild and be great. And it's like, in reality, that's the outlier, and it's because of the rest of that division. It's not because they're that good and it's possible to do like that. So I think next year is going to be a really bad year for the Bengals. I think they're going to have a lottery pick next year. But I just, that's just sort of where they're at right now.
I hear you. As far as one of the games that we didn't touch on today during our discussion, is there any game that like you still would kind of want to watch that like we didn't really get a chance to chat about? For me, like Rams Patriots could be that. The Rams play really entertaining football typically to me, And seeing Drake May, I'm kind of interested in his development, although the offense isn't good. So for me, that's kind of one of those stuck at the 1 p.m. time slot. But like, I think that game could be interesting. I definitely would want to watch parts or angles of that game. Anything for you that stands out besides these like star-studded games we talked about already?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm going to watch Detroit Jacksonville. I think
Shouldn't be close.
it shouldn't be close. I think it'll be a really good get right game for Jared Goff. One of the things that's been really, really surprising is how the number of people that have been talking like the 5 interception game that we saw on Sunday night is the standard, not the outlier. When there have been 4 or 5 times this year that like he hasn't thrown an incompletion in the entirety of the first half. And it's like we've seen like that is the consistency that we've seen. This was the outlier. It was a terrible outlier. I'm not going to act like, oh, like it wasn't that bad. It was a terrible outlier, though granted, I think a couple of the interceptions weren't his fault. One of them was a fumble. So let's start with that. One of them, if the ball had touched the ground, they would have reviewed it, called it a fumble. But
one of them was an end of half Hail Mary. So like
one of them was an end of half Hail Mary, and the one down the field to Jameson Williams decided to go out instead of up. That just happens. And so it ended up being a pick. He tried to give Jameson Williams a jump ball, and Jameson Williams wasn't even in the vicinity to make it a jump ball. Still a bad pass, but again, I don't like they're not entirely his fault. Even the first one, ball got tipped up in the air, and a guy made a great play, right? So I'm not going to act like he looked great because there were lots of incompletions that I was like, Jared, what the heck was that? But I think that a lot of people are acting like, oh, nope, this is the reality of who Jared Goff is. And it's like, I think the reality of who Jared Goff is the guy that was completing passes, and this was just a weird misnomer. So I'm going to be watching that game. I think it'll be good get right game. I think it's really positive for the Lions that despite that bad of a game, they were still able to win on the road against probably a team that's going to win their division. I hear you about Rams Patriots just because I agree. Like I want to see the Drake May development. I'm excited by that. I got sneezed. Ooh, that was good. Atlanta at Denver, I'm actually a little intrigued by because of how good Denver has been playing with Bo Nick and because of how good Atlanta has been playing with Kirk Cousins. That's like a weird, like sneaky between two playoff teams game that I don't think any of us preseason would have thought would be like that. So also, I'm excited to watch it just to see CJ Stroud back up his talk that he had with Micah Parsons during the offseason. I can't wait to watch the Texans absolutely obliterate the Cowboys.
Yeah. I think, by the way, for your Lions against the Jags, I think Mac Jones is going to start again. I think Trevor Lawrence is still injured. So that this feels like a recipe for another Lions 50 piece. Like seeing Ben Johnson do wacky throw to the tackle, hook and ladder, fake punt. Like that, this feels like a game that's probably going to be like a 50 piece again.
Yeah,
especially with Mac Jones.
It looks it seems very similar to me to when the Lions played the Mason Rudolph Titans earlier this year at home. So yeah, I'm not too worried. I think there's a chance that we see Hendon Hooker for like the entirety of the fourth quarter. But it'll be good to see them get right. It'll be the first time seeing Zadarius Smith lined up for the Lions, and hey, props to Dan Campbell, man. Like Zadarius Smith was prepared to show up and to play, and Dan Campbell was like, listen, this was supposed to be your bye week. I'm not letting you play this week. And Smith even said after the game on post game, he said like he wanted to be out there, but he really appreciated how much the organization just cares about their players and stuff, and was like, no, like you earned your bye playing in Cleveland, so we're going to give you that bye. With the way the result of the game, I kind of wish he was playing, but it is what it is. So yeah, and hey. Lions pass rush looked pretty good against Houston. Again, Houston's offensive line is not good. I'm not going to act like they did it against, themselves. But still, looked pretty good. So I'm intrigued. I'm hopeful, despite how many years of age I lost on Sunday night watching that game. I'm hopeful moving forward. So
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Well, everybody, thanks so much for watching, for taking the time to watch, to listen. By all means, please like and subscribe. And yeah, thanks so much for supporting us. And have a great week, everybody.